Podcast. Today we're joined by cultural advisor and tribal member Bobby Mercier with the achaf-hammi Plankhouse 15th birthday celebration coming up on Saturday, October 19th. We thought we would bring Bobby Mercier onto the podcast to reflect on the Plankhouse's history with us. So, Bobby, before we dive into the Plankhouse, why don't you tell me what the origins of Plankhouses are with tribes of this region and specifically our tribe?
Mainly just our region is that was really accessible for us with cedar, and so using it from everything from the clothing to the canoes to our housing, and being able to split those huge planks out of old growth we were able to build our houses. Cool. So they're just our living quarters.
Would each tribe have one large plank house that was used or multiple?
I mean, most of them would have one central house, a big house, and then several small houses around it. So
cool.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about achaf-hammi a little bit? Tell me what your involvement was with the creation of the plank house or other key figures who were involved.
Yeah. So since we first started talking about building the longhouse again, a handful of us started meeting, and the biggest question that we kept getting from our kids every time we went somewhere was, how come we don't have our own longhouse? Why don't we have our own? All these people have theirs. And we were like, why don't we have one? And so looking at all the different houses that we come from, there's about 5 different main house styles that we come from. And so we had to really look at all of those when we were talking about building a house. Were we going to build it like our Umpqua houses? Were we going to build it like our Chinook houses, a Tillamook house? And just looking at all these different designs so it took a little bit of planning.
What is the key differences between the different styles? Is there?
Yeah, I mean anywhere from the pitch of the roof to which way it's facing. Gotcha. To being down in the ground, like a pit house. There's a lot of different things.
We have a couple photos from the Smoke Signals archive, which I went through and collected as far back as 2008. And I'm going to show you a few of these photos. I'll also just describe the cut line for the listeners who can't see the photo. This photo says, Don Day demonstrates how he and volunteers plan to split cedar logs into planks for use of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde's Longhouse. Day uses a mallet made with a Douglas fir trunk and branch and wedges made of yew and old oak to split the huge logs. So it just shows him splitting this.
I remember the day.
Were you there for that as well? Why don't you tell me kind of what's going on here, what was going on that day?
So there's a lot, and there's some backstory to this as well. We were actually going to build the longhouse down by where the rodeo grounds is, where the sweat houses are, where it's all cut out, that bank there.
Yeah.
We were going to build a longhouse there first. We had an architect come in. We explained all kinds of stuff. We went through all kinds of drawings, and they came up with a little model, which we might still have around here somewhere. And the plan was to split all our own planks. Mm-hmm. And just having Don there, he'd done lots of plank splitting. And so he was demoing how to get the best planks out of these logs. And so when we first started talking about building this house, we're like, oh yeah, we'll get a bunch of tribal members together and split all these planks ourselves.
A lot of work.
And that was a lot of work. There was a lot of planks that were split. We still do have some of those planks. And so we've utilized just them for certain things, but we still have some of those hand split planks. Yeah.
Did those go into the plank house that we have now, or they were usually just
some of them? Yeah. For certain things, yeah. But for the most part, we were also on a timeline, and so we started milling them up.
Yeah, I bet so. Yeah. a lot easier doing it that way.
Yeah.
All right, so the next photo we have is actually a pretty cool one. It's a Chinook helicopter lowers a cedar log to the landing site off Soda Fork Road. The U.S. Forest Service is providing the wood to the Grand Ronde tribe for a longhouse that is planned to be built using traditional methods.
Yeah.
This is from, what is this? This is January of 2018 or 2008.
Yeah. There's a story about these too. When we first started talking about building a longhouse, we were also mentioning that around Forest Service. We had some meetings with some different Forest Service, and they're like, "Oh, really? You should probably come and look at what we got." So there's a story behind these logs that in 1913 there was a fire up in Sweet Home. Brushed through there really quick, and because the bark was so thick on these trees, and these were all old growth logs. Most of them 200 to 800 to 1,000 years old. I mean, they're big logs. It just burned through really quick. It didn't burn a lot of the tree. So there's these huge standing towers of all these burnt trees. And Forest Service in the 30s decided they were going to go in and cut a whole bunch of these down because they're blocking the sunlight. And so when we started talking about that, they said, you should come and look at some of the cedars we have in our canyons. We cut them down in the 30s because of a fire, but you should come look at them. And so Don Day and one of our buddies, Tony Farquet from Sweet Home, and one of our foresters, and then went down in a canyon and cut into one of these logs, and it was like it just fell yesterday.
Wow.
So looking at all the logs that were all over that hillside, we're like, man, this would work perfect. And so they cut the logs to the lengths that we could get them out, and hired the helicopter pilot to come and take them out so we wouldn't have to cut any roads in to go get these logs. Now, most of these logs we could bring here maybe 3 at a time. Some of them we could only bring 1 at a time because even on the ends, they were still like 7 feet tall.
That's crazy.
So some big old growth logs. But yeah, this is them taking them out of the canyon and putting them in a deck of logs so that they can be put on trucks to be brought here.
Yeah. That would be quite a sight to see.
It was quite an adventure.
Yeah. All right. The next photo I have, the right contractor David Rogers guides the first side beam of the Grand Ronde Plankhouse at the powwow grounds.
Yeah. So when you walk in the front door, the middle post, that's where this log is. And the very first post that we put up, we had the preschool come up and a bunch of the community come up, and we put a bunch of stuff underneath this pole. When it was being set, some brought gifts, some put necklaces, some put feathers, tobacco, sage, all kinds of stuff underneath this first pole, just saying prayers that would always hold up our house. So.
That's really cool. I had no idea. I'd never heard of that.
There was the preschool came up, and then we sang and stuff. So yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What a fun fact about the Plankhouse. All right, let's go to the next one. So this one is from, I believe, 2010, because we jump ahead. Yeah, 2010 or 9, I can't remember. Yeah. But Grand Ronde Canoe family members give away items during the Tribal Plankhouse grand opening on September 19th. Which, according to my records, I believe you were at.
So every time after all of our guests have got up and spoke and shared songs and shared dances with our community, we go last and we share in a handful of songs and dances, and then we have a big giveaway. From the tribe, for also different families bring a bunch of gifts. Some different departments, they'll bring gifts and stuff that they've been working on all year, and we give it to all our guests and some of the community.
So that was the grand opening. What was that like?
We have people that come here from all the way up into Canada that come here to be here with us on that weekend and celebrate with us, and it's just a time for us to give back. Just have that giveaway. For a giveaway, we have a big meal, and all the community members that come, just to be together, and then all of our guests that come there to witness us being thankful for everything it's done throughout the year for us. So we're celebrating the birthday of the house, but also we're celebrating the house itself and what all it's done for us throughout the year of taking care of us in our community. So this is a way for us to just acknowledge that. So
we don't have to go. This was just one of the clips I was talking about. The first year of the Plankhouse restoration was actually held there, or a portion of restoration. And it had said that you were giving the blessing and encouraging tribal members who missed the Plankhouse dedication to attend. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then here's the last photo. The Grand Ronde Canoe family sings and drums during the first anniversary of the opening of achaf-hammi Plankhouse. And this was October of 2011. And I believe that's you there. If it's not, correct me.
Oh, yeah.
But why don't you tell me, what was the first, do you remember anything about the first anniversary of it?
Yeah, it was very cold.
It is cold.
There was ice everywhere. We hadn't, there was a lot of things that were supposed to be done by then and they didn't get done.
Really?
And so a lot of last minute scrambling. The batten on the walls weren't done, so there was about a 2-inch gap in between each board all the way down around the house. So it was blowing wind from every direction in the house. The 2 big sliding doors didn't get done in time. We had to cover that. That was covered up with plastic. Yeah, and so it was pretty chilly in there. But yeah, a lot of little kids in that picture.
We're all grown up
They're
now,
all grown
15
up now,
years later.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question I did have for you was, what is the process for building the Plankhouse / how long did it take to do?
Yeah, I mean, after we got the logs, there was decks of log. The whole parking lot in front of the bottom of the house and then across the street by the powwow grounds was just nothing but decks of logs. We had decks of logs down by the rodeo ground. Mm-hmm. We had a mill down by the rodeo ground. We were milling up logs down there. We brought in a mill and was milling up everything that we need for to build the structure right there at the parking lot by the longhouse. And probably did about 60% of it ourselves of milling. Mm-hmm. The rest we had to send to mill in Woodland that could still do old growth logs that big.
Wow.
And so they did like the really long planks on the ends of the house and stuff. It off and on throughout, it took about 1.5 years to build, and probably about 80 people. Off and on, there was several different contractors, programs, the 477 program, just a lot of community that wanted to just show up and help. And that's where we got the cedar from. Now, the fir logs that are in there that actually are the structure of the building, those come from a place we call the 690 Cutover Road. It's up on the reservation, and we were going to cut these old growth logs up there out of the stand, and we went up and hand selected all those logs, brought them down, and then each one of those logs was hand scraped. They scraped all the bark off the logs by hand. They were pressure washed, and then they were wiped down with a solution to help kind of cure the logs. And so a lot of tribal hands, a lot of community has gone into building that house. So
That's pretty cool. I think I know the answer to this question, but why is it called achaf-hammi?
Achaf-hammi. So that achaf-hammi translates in Tualatin Kalapuya to a house built of cedar planks. When we were brought here to the reservation, where the really sharp corner is before you get to the longhouse, going around this way from NRD, that really sharp corner, we all call Dead Man's Corner there. Back in that little valley there, that's where the Tualatins were put when we were brought here.
Yeah. And
so being that close to where they were put, we were looking for something in our Tualatin Kalapuya language. That's cool. And so that's why we chose that name.
That I didn't know. All right. And one of my last questions for you is, how do we use the Plankhouse today? Besides a birthday
Besides the
celebration?
birthday, I mean, we have culture camp there. We have first food ceremonies there. We have namings, and there's memorials and wakes. We've had weddings there. We have the huge warrior camp that goes on in the middle of the summer. We have 200 plus kids from all across the country come there to be with us for the weekend, and numerous family events. So when we were building the house, we really had to think about that, of all the different people that house needs to represent. And so not everybody comes from the Rogue Valley, not everybody's Kalapuya or Chinook. And so by taking bits and pieces of all those different styles of houses that we come from, we're able to make all the families comfortable about being in there. So
it's a pretty cool space.
Yeah.
All right, I will close this up. Thank you for joining me today on the Smoke Signals podcast. For those interested in attending, the birthday celebration will be held at achaf-hammi on Saturday, October 19th, with doors opening at 4 p.m. and a meal being served at 5:30 p.m. I'm Kamaya, the social media digital journalist for Smoke Signals.